I will call this meeting to order November the 1st, the Finance Committee in the City of Norwood. So we'll begin by, I guess, Jim, if you got a couple spreadsheets here to take a look at and give us an idea where we're at right now.
Yeah, most of this has to do with invoices, billed, paid, money owed, how much there's going to be to pay bills, et cetera, and some things that we may be looking for a little guidance on. We do have an update on the forecast for projected costs for all keys in the general fund from 2017. That document is basically done. Projected total cost to the end of this year, how far it exceeds appropriations, and projected costs for 2017, which is the beginning steps of writing that budget, and then going back and having to cut things out, which it looks like right now $2 million has to come out of the general fund budget to balance. That means paying all outstanding purchase orders and all outstanding debt from this year that we're not going to be able to pay, and how much there is next year. I'm meeting with April Davis from the Auditor of State on Friday to look over that, and should have something to send out to you then to start looking at. As it stands now, as everybody knows, we are behind on a lot of bills. We don't have the money. Our expenses exceed our revenue. And on a month-to-month basis, we try to look at that priority of outstanding purchase orders. Not even purchase orders, but invoices. So this sheet here, the long one, these are all the bills that are owed. This includes all the money to pension and C9 trust and everything else. This is all outstanding invoices for the general fund alone, and the dates that the invoices were created are on here. This is a fluid document. It is a spreadsheet. You can get one of these emailed to you because it changes on an at least bi-week or semi-weekly basis. Even on a daily basis to some of these, as we pay things and as new invoices come in, Jane in my office can always email you a copy of this if you want to see. And it's broken down too into 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, where the vendors are. Some vendors are more boisterous than others, some are more sensitive than others, and we try to work with our vendors as much as we can, with the understanding we have limited resources to make payment. And so we try to look at these from a priority standpoint. And if you look at the next sheet that says most urgent bills in order of priority, this was put together by Jane. She makes one of these every month, and she is the one who answers the phone as it rings all day long, as we try to explain to vendors why we can't pay them, because we don't have the money. Our expenses exceed our revenue this year, as they did last year. Looking at this in priority, you'll see there's some big things. Cincinnati Bell has threatened to send us to collection. Duke Energy has talked about sending us to collection and getting things turned off. Lycans, as you know, a mass email went out, which I then replied to, trying to explain the situation with them. They have been willing to work with us, and we did make payment to them today, and they should be delivering. But basically, we're making half payments to them, and they're giving us half deliveries. It was our intention last month in October to make 2 payments and start getting caught up, but the county settlement money did not come in until yesterday afternoon.
I was going to say, it did come in though, but finally.
$156,000 about that for the general fund. That's the tangible personal property tax and the general property tax. We still were negative when I left the office yesterday, about $40,000 year to date in the general fund. However, that is not including revenue that is reported after the month-end close, which typically is from the building department and recreation. And where I don't see a large amount coming in from recreation to support that, there tends to be a little bit. And the big part is building department. If they brought in more than 40,000, we should be positive this month. But again, that one, it depends on what plans are filed, and it's a very irregular revenue stream. So my hopes are that we're going to be positive when we actually close those final figures out. It takes about a week after the end of the month for the treasurer to report all of those, balance with each office, balance with us. Most things are already balanced. They keep this keep on top of it all month long, but the finals aren't reported till the end. So a lot of times it can happen in a few days, but we usually like to say, about a week just to be safe. And looking at that, so those are the most important things that have to be paid. And if you guys look down the list, there's things like the copying machines. Well, there's a lot of different leases on copiers. And Wells Fargo bought out the lease from two of our copiers, leaseholders, and, they call every day, multiple times a day, and threaten to come and take them away. So they're on the list. We're within 60 days with them, but they want 60 days is where that's their cutoff. There's Millennium, which is other copiers. We've got to get them paid. But if you just kind of look down the list, the most sensitive ones are those ones at the top of the list. And these are vendors. These are not our other expenses. If you look at the long cash flow sheet, you guys have all seen this before. And it kind of looks at revenue and expenditures. I don't know if we're going to hit our revenues. If you look in October, I'm showing that we should have a carryover to next month of $52,000. We still are waiting. We're going to have to see how much comes in now that we're closed out, or what else came in even to the tax department after we left at about 4 o'clock on the 31st. So it would be great if we had the $52,000 to carry over, because we need it. November is typically one of our lower months in revenue. We are projecting November's revenue to be $1.2 million. And when we look at the long sheet that says rundown here, these are the big things that we have to pay. The cash flow sheet, when you look at it, it's all the big monthly expenses. What do we have to hit? What do we have to pay? How are we going to do it? These are the big things. Some things get paid, some things don't. But the priority of what is important to pay is on this rundown sheet. And this is just loosely taking this most urgent bill sheet, putting it in a spreadsheet, listing it in that order, and then putting the priority pays above it. So number one, police and fire pension, $200,000. That is our agreement. We have to keep paying them that. About $150,000 worth of new pension payments every month, plus $50,000 applied to our arrears amount. The first payroll should be between $408,000 and $412,000. This is 10/7, that should be 11/4. And the other one's 11/18. Playing Anthem, $219,667. That's for our existing health insurance. The next payroll, another $408,000. Bond retirement, that's interest payments to U.S. Bank, $5,700. Our OPERS payment, that's for the other pension, the city's contribution, $23,000. Benovation, the monthly premium on the health insurance for the retirees, $28,000, and lichens. We start drafting these checks early. The police and fire pension's already been drafted, Anthem's been drafted, lichens been drafted, Benovation, because those are right now the most sensitive ones. The bond retirement transfer doesn't happen until the end of the month, so we have to see if there is that money, but it's something we do want to account for. And we have 2 payrolls this month. We move into the negative range pretty quickly. We haven't even talked about the other things on this list other than lichens, and we're already in it by the time we pay lichens $8,700 for vehicle fuel. That buys us 1,500 gallons of fuel. We need about 3,000 a month. We try to pay it as we can. there's not enough cash to pay things. This month's going to be even tighter. Next month in December, we're saying December already, that's kind of depressing. There are 3 payrolls in December. And I do not see how we're going to make that last one. I think the last payroll in December is going to be January 2nd or 3rd, whatever that Monday is. Longevity pay, I don't see how that's going to be. I've been saying this for months, but I want to reiterate it because it's a reality. Even if we don't pay these vendors, the money's not there for it. We're working with the state auditor at this time. I'm not sure where we are with the establishment of the commission and all of that, but once they get established, we'll have the material that they need to look at to see where we are. And what we need to start taking out of the budget for next year.
The November numbers that we were just discussing as far as the run up or run down,
Yes.
does that number include like that 50,
No.
potential 52? Okay,
That's where I said I really hope that comes in, and that's why we've paid a few things. That is just the raw projected revenue, and that can adjust throughout the month. We had in revenue, when we look at earnings tax, September was down 106,000 under projected. And hopefully October, as we close, will be up a little bit, and then again, November will be up a little bit because September was down. Now, September, usually that's when people pay there's a spike in it, because that's when their extensions run out. But we'll have to see how that plays out. It's kind of moves through this cycle of, being up and being down and being up and being down. And there's a difference. A lot of times people look at the letter that's produced by the tax commissioner that says, we are up 3% for this year, an increase of X amount of dollars. That's true. That's not above predicted. That's above last year.
Right.
And so when you sit down with them in the beginning of the year and you say, what is the predicted monthly, how much do you expect every month to come in? That's the number we use, as opposed to how much came in last year. So you'll always see a difference, and they might be saying we're up 3%, and I'm saying we're 106 under our target. So there's apples and oranges. I wanted to make everyone aware of kind of the situation for the vendors and share the information of the priority list and get some instruction or some advice as to how you would want to approach this. You've seen, my office's suggestion of the order of payment. But obviously, there's a lot of things that have to be paid. So,
just from looking at both sheets, I mean, if that rollover or even a percentage of it does come through, I would think, between gas and electric and the phone service, would be somewhat of a priority. If you don't have the electric or the lights on, can't do much else without it.
at least taking the July payments for those. Separation pay, we have been paying people monthly payments, and we've paid a few of them off. The end of this month, we'll have paid off 4, and still working on another one. And we've got 4 new ones to the tune of $60,000 that we'll need to make a plan for. In talking to them, we want to try to structure it so that as one of the larger payments falls off, we start another large payment and work on doing that. Most of the people who've left the city are very understandable and willing to work, and as long as, we structure a plan that they seem okay with that.
I had a question about the, if you don't mind, the C9 Trust. I was looking at I think it's C9 Trust. I was looking at the numbers about what was owed, or look at like the invoices, and it looks like we've only had one like addition of funds here since April 30th. Is there going to be another big chunk that's going to show up on here?
I would imagine so. Marilyn could probably speak to this to some extent as far as Benovation, the company that has been sending us the invoices and bills, has not been doing it in a reliable fashion. And there's been some personnel changes there. And so just like we went several months in the retirees' healthcare and didn't get any bills from CVS, and all of a sudden we got a call saying, we're cutting you off. And we're like, what do you mean? We've paid every bill for CVS that we've gotten. And then all of a sudden come to find out, Benovation wasn't sending us those invoices. Similarly, we went from, paying $28,000 a month for the premium and for office visits to 1 month paying $70,000 because they pulled 3 or 4 months worth together and dumped them on all of us at once and said, you have to pay this now or people won't be able to go to the doctor's office. So I know it doesn't seem to be a reliable billing mechanism from my standpoint.
I haven't gotten that far into it. All the information I got, I was hoping to hear back from our administration by today. And actually, I was hoping you had some information or somebody had some information on it today. I know James sent a letter. Did you hear back, James? About the C9 Trust and the Benovations?
With what? Excuse me.
You sent a letter last week about the C9 Trust. Did you hear back? I didn't hear back.
I was going to say, I have not heard back from
Okay,
that letter.
I have not heard back, so I don't have any clue what's going on with that.
But at this point, another invoice, I've not really been chasing it down for the C9 Trust because frankly, we have to start paying the most arrears on them first. And so I imagine there's a big invoice hanging out there, probably to the tune of about $50,000 that we've not gotten, or more.
I have made 2 calls to the Vice President of Innovations, and I have not gotten return calls from him either.
In doing the projections for the year end and looking at how much is owed, we actually look at how much is owed to either C9 Trust or to the police and fire pension. And as we look, it looks like we're going to be in the $970,000 range in open POs at the end of the year. And as we start to close more and more of those, that number will drop. But obviously, we want to get that number as low as possible to free up more capital next year to be able to write the budget. Because we've got about a $20 million budget next year, and we've got about $18 million to spend, because money has to go to pay the stuff that's on this list. The forecast I'm writing does go through 2022, I believe.
As far as the other, I don't know, that enterprise technologies, as far as that takes advantage of that, as far as the radio usage they have on there, the Cage's license.
I believe that radio usage has something to do with us piggybacking on Cincinnati, isn't that correct?
And if you look at your ordinance, when you did the agreement to do the lease deal with the city of Cincinnati back in 2004, 5, the city agreed to pay for the utility use at that location in exchange for the land use and the radio channel. That was an ordinance thing that paid. I don't know how they bill you guys, but that's definitely what that is.
Yeah.
Enterprise Technology is probably an arm of the city of Cincinnati that's billing that.
Was that an August bill? Is that, or is that something that came in more recent?
That's a current bill, but it's one that we need to stay up on.
Yeah. I mean, that's-
The ones that are more past due, or the ones where we have multiples, they show the actual dates next to it, the ones that are more time sensitive. So, for example, we just paid Lycan's July bill. We still owe August bill from Lycan's. And if we're paying, we need to at least make a double payment 1 month to start getting caught up, otherwise they're gonna always be in arrears. And, buying fuel from them is a significant savings over buying gas cards to go to Kroger. This is the way to do it, but. And they have cost us significantly less than they did 4 or 5 years ago. But I think one point is, we talk to these vendors at least every week, some of them every day, repeatedly. And we try to give them an idea of when they're going to get paid. And when we don't know, we say we don't know. But we have a relationship, and most of them are pleasant people and understand, the rough patch that we're going through and understand things will get better. And, even the ones that we're cut off from, they say, when you get back paid up with us, you could start doing business with us again, most of them. And, that relationship between the two people on the phone goes a long way. And so, I can't list for you all of the different vendors and all the different discussions and all the different kind of arrangements that we've got with them to get them paid, but when it comes down to it, we don't have enough cash to pay everyone, or even to pay a quarter of this. And so we have to look at that kind of priority list. And
Hey, Jim, what are these tax refunds on here?
earnings tax refunds,
Yeah.
those are actually probably money that's owed to people that filed and then filed an amended return.
Yeah. Okay, so if we add up, I'm looking at.
Yep,
I mean,
two tax refunds due. So typically what happens is we get a batch once a month, twice a month from the earnings tax office that says, here's people that filed, and probably from these dates, these are people that filed an extension and then filed their taxes. And so individuals have money that's owed to them, and it's in a block. So if we owed everybody in this room $50, we wouldn't do a PO for each one. It would be one block of money, so there's 107,000, right?
So I'm seeing on, like, the tax refunds here, so that for October 4th, there was 42,000.
Yep.
October 26th, 107,000, so 150,000 total. So, like, it's not on the cash flow sheet. Is that just because we don't really have a plan to pay that out? Is that why we?
Well, that wasn't put on there yet. Typically, we pay the earnings tax in lumps as it comes. The big one that's on there now is the MedPace, which our final payment to them is in December. And we would add that in once we get down to the point where we can pay that. So probably beginning of December, hopefully, we'll pay one or both of those, and then we would add it into the sheet. The cash flow sheet kind of looks at those regular incremental things that hit, and these are just sort of add-ons at this point.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say, and I'd love to, I know that we talked about this before, but I'll just kind of make it official here, but I know I'd love, we used to have the totals of what we owe each, like the scene on trust and everything on the right-hand side. So I definitely would love to get those totals back, just so that we can have a better picture of where the city's at.
And, yeah, and what he's talking about is usually there's an additional column that's cut off on this one that shows the balances for each key, including the general fund key, that are owed. And some months I even go so far as to say what's 90, 60, and 30 days. The reason I didn't print it on this one is we've not done this sheet since we're in the process of closing October, so it still had September's numbers on it. So we should get that, in a week or so, and then update that by pulling those numbers in. The biggest one to calculate is the general fund and doing the totals for 30, 60, and 90 days.
Awesome. And then I noticed too that we still had quite a few invoices, like there's some that's from May, some from June. We're not, I guess we're not 90 days anymore when it comes to it being paid up at this point. We've got.
No, and it really depends on what the invoices are and when we got them.
Phoenix would be an example that I was looking at earlier.
Yes. When we went and we got caught up in, I believe, July or August, we brought everybody up to within 90 days, and then we've just been piecemealing it as we go and taking a priority list. And typically, during a month, we'll sit there and say, we'll calculate out and say, how much will it cost to get everybody up to 90 days, and start with that figure. And that's what we did last month. And we just didn't hit that number by the end of the month. We still don't have the county settlement sheet. I know how much goes to the general fund, but the actual sheet, which tells us key by key where things go and how much our expenses are, we're still waiting for that. So once we get the county settlement sheet, we will know all of the county fees and state fees that are on that, so that we can put those into all of the miscellaneous expenses and then change appropriations, hopefully down and not up, to match each one of those totals. We estimate how much the county is going to charge us for collecting our tax money and doing the accounting. But the exact number is not known until you get that sheet. So we may free up a little bit of money to use that way. But again, that's appropriations. It also tells us within all of the funds, all of the TIF funds and all the other funds that get money from that, it tells us how much goes into each one of those funds. And so we have to balance that and put all of that into the system, and then we can look at our appropriations. We're over on appropriations in many areas. A big painful area for us right now is dispatch. They've exceeded their total appropriations, their total budget. And so at this point, they're just eating into, their personnel costs are eating into the money that's left for anything else. Fire's getting close, police are getting close. There's a few others that are just right there. Everybody's going to be over at the end of the year because we're spending more than we have money to pay. I don't know how to put a control on that. I don't hire and fire people. And when they hit that point, do I just not pay payroll?
Actually, that's a question for me. I guess I'm kind of confused, and maybe this is just personnel key is the only thing, but I'm confused why we have appropriations if we can go over them. Why wouldn't we have to come back to council for us just to give more money? 'Cause of course, if we need dispatchers, we need police and fire, but I guess it just seems that we can't go over. If we were to submit a purchase order for a key that doesn't have enough funds, the purchase order would get rejected.
That's correct.
So should we be adding appropriations into these keys?
If we had it, we should be, absolutely.
But if we're gonna spend the money, like,
But the problem is, we don't have enough. Yeah.
but we're spending it either, I guess my thing is we're spending it either way, so shouldn't it?
The only two areas under Ohio law that you don't have to have a purchase order for, okay? Because you cannot go and enter into an invoice or an agreement or a contract with any agreement in the city without having a purchase order, unless it deals with legal fees, because lawyers write the laws, or personnel cost. You don't need a PO
Okay.
for your personnel costs, so there's not that restriction. So then what happens when a department runs over the amount that's appropriated? What is the mechanism to make that stop? You know, do I not write? And then, so they actually build into the system and they say, the reason that is, that you don't need POs for that is because it's very difficult to predict exactly how much your, payroll is going to be in a given department. Most departments, you have a pretty good idea. Other departments, because of overtime, floods, blizzards, fires, you don't know. And so they allow, the law says that you cannot pass an appropriation that exceeds 60% of your yearly amount in a payroll key after June 30th, or by June 30th. So technically, we didn't do that. We did not exceed that amount. And when you look at the state auditor's report, they talk about our payroll, we passed under payroll. But it still leaves us 10% short, some places 6%, some places we have enough, some places we have more. And we'll have to move some of that around a little bit to balance on the next appropriation ordinance. But there's a lot of areas that we're going to be drastically short, hundreds of thousands of dollars in different keys. And that's where the shortfall comes. And if we're going to continue to pay the health insurance and the payroll, that means those hundreds and thousands of dollars that key is over means there's hundreds of thousands of dollars less to pay the POs and the invoices that we have. There's only so much money, there's only so much cash.
I guess part of what James was kind of saying was, just to elaborate on the question, if we really don't have a, like a check or on like a hiring, if somebody comes in and hires someone in whatever department and then comes in and says, we hire these guys, get them on the payroll, even if there's not appropriations applied there, like you were just saying, it can be done, they can be hired without having, a PO or something written to say that. So I guess the question would be, or I guess what to look at in short and long term is, before someone's hired, who should be approached or asked, about the hiring, whether, do they come to council, or would they go, number one, to the auditor's office and say, hey, we got 2 openings here, or we need somebody else for this or that. We want to, hire them in the next couple weeks. Is there appropriations, to do that? And we look, says, no, there's not. You're going to have to go get an appropriation change before we can put them on the payroll. Otherwise, we're not going to have enough money, which is kind of the case right now, to pay them. Like some of as we were talking, some of the people just got hired on, and we really didn't have them figured into the.
We didn't know they were going to be hired until
Yeah.
they showed up and filled out paperwork in my office.
So I guess what we need to kind of look at is how, before anybody hires anybody, granted, it's within your realm to do so. However, we gotta have a mechanism in place to be able to pay them, once they're hired. So, you know, how we, or who we go to, you know, to make that, you know, that change or to get something implemented, so that at least everybody's aware of it, so we can't say, well, I didn't know they were hiring, well, you know, I told you yesterday. Well, if we have something, at least we're all to blame, or. so-
These are the types of things that the fiscal emergency is supposed to be designed to allow us to fix. And creating that infrastructure, that set of tools to prevent ourselves from getting to this situation again. First of all, getting ourselves out of it, planning for the future. We'll see what we can do.
So I guess one of the things we ought to look at is that as part of not only that, but just relate to everyone, you know, we need to, before we're hiring folks, we need to know that that's going to happen.
Didn't we say
And the
months ago
consequences.
we weren't hiring anyone?
We did, yes. So,
We put a hiring freeze on months
Yeah.
ago,
yeah,
and it wasn't held.
so, but that's what I'm saying, what type of procedure can we come up with or something to say, hey,
I
you
thought
know,
that was a good procedure.
well, yeah, but I mean, so it,
So we asked kindly, you know, for a hiring freeze, and are you saying that it wasn't followed, that Mr. Mumford asked
Exactly.
kindly and they didn't listen to Mr. Mumford? That's
So- but I would think, you know, if somehow, before we hire anybody or anything, we need to, somebody needs to be aware of it and not just, you know, casual conversation, hey, I'm gonna hire this guy, is that all right? Oh, yeah, go ahead. I mean, we need to know that there's something in place to be able to get them paid, so. So I think that's something we'll have to think about, send a note to someone to say, hey, your departments need to be, you know, looking a little bit out in the future on this, hey, you know, we're gonna hire somebody in a couple weeks, do we have that? So that at least everybody's aware of it, and, so,
Is this all in 911, all these
The
hirings?
4 new ones are, yeah. The 4 new ones are as far as I know. Yeah. Just to, change the subject as quickly. Like I said, we did put the projections together for the budget for next year. Ideal budget, so things will have to come out of it. But the state wanted us to put something together that shows everything. And also, within that, both the police chief and the fire chief and their staff have been working on budgets for each one of their departments that are line item breakdowns with, even including personnel costs and what their projections for overtime, et cetera, are. So they're really working hard on it. And so we've met with them, we've turned over a lot of data to them, they're working on it. And I would anticipate that we should be seeing something back by mid-November on that, and then see how it matches what I have in the system. And that's gonna be a very fluid thing that, you know, we will apply changes to. The way the state wanted this to be structured is very similar to what, if you think what the tax budget looks like, where there's one page, shows all the revenue, then you have subsequent pages that show the expenses, and then at the bottom, revenue over expenses, how much we carry over and how much the encumbrances are, and that has to be 0 or greater by the end of next year. And because it is a several-year plan, it'll show the carryover each year, and you can plug things into it. But that's the total amount of what we think, you know, all of the existing agreements, and based on, you know, all of full staff in each one of the departments. And then below that, you can add in lines. So finance committee would say, or council would say, what if we cut X, Y, or Z? And I would we'd make a line under that that says, if you cut it, you lose this much revenue, but you also decrease this much expense, and the total is now this. And the idea is you ask for those figures on 10, 15 different things, and then you pick and choose which ones. But that's the format that they want, and we've basically got that mostly done. They're gonna look at it on Friday. But hopefully that'll be a little easier to understand tool.
Excellent. I mean, just going back to the previous conversation, yeah, I know it's too late this year, but, and it may not even be practical for next year, but I'd like to see, if we as a council set appropriations for a key, I'd like to see them enforced. And personally, I would. If a key needs more money than funds, then maybe we need to find places for it. And maybe this is what the fiscal emergency is going to do. I don't know. But to me, it just seems odd that we say that we have this much money to spend in, let's just say, our clerk of court his office, and yet there could be more and more spent past that, I guess, whatever amount it was, and there's no, not recourse, but we have to then find it from somewhere else, or it's going to be carried over to the next year. And I guess it just, to me, I'm not a fan of seeing that happen. Like, if we need to spend the money, then we should make appropriations for it. If we don't need to, if we don't need to spend that money, then we don't make the appropriations, and the money shouldn't get spent, in my opinion. But I just want to see us get back on a.
You do realize we have a statement of resources that we have to follow. We can't appropriate money that we're not going to have.
So if we can't appropriate money that we're not going to have, then why are we spending it anyways? I guess that's the question that I would ask. Because we're spending it, whether we appropriate it or not, it's getting spent.
Right. But we can't appropriate money that we don't have. That's the first rule.
I'll just say that, so if we're willingly going to spend more money than we have, and that's what kind of the statement that we're
Some
making.
of our contracts that we have cause us to spend money. Longevity, all kinds of different things that we have to pay.
Yeah, and again, I understand that, but again, so I'll leave it at, I'll leave mine at that, but.
And
it's just
the
a
major
concern.
downfall this year, above anything else, is 27 payrolls. It's that trick of the calendar. It kills us. I mean, when you add everything else into that mix, that's $500,000. We're gonna be 2 million short. This year, we're gonna be about 2.4 million short, which, when I did the tax budget in June, the projection was 2 million. But by the time you actually add in the outstanding invoices and things we have, it's about 2.4 million, which leaves us, that's why we have less next year. And even though some areas of expense, major areas, bond retirement and the MedPace tax refund, go down, all of those savings shift to what we owe from this year. It's to what we owe our employees, it's to what we owe our contractors, it's to what we owe our vendors, and what we owe our retirees. If we want to pay all of that, pay everything next year, including the amount owed from 27 payrolls this year and 26 payrolls next year, and all the additional pays, and all of the money to the C9 trust, and all the money to the retirees' health care, and by December 31st of 2018, end with a zero balance, not negative, cover all of the encumbrances even at that time, meaning we have $100,000, but we owe 100. That's where the 18 million comes from, and that's where we gotta take out roughly 2 million. I think the last time I looked at it was $2,097,000, so just under 2.1 million. Depending on how you do the calculation, it's right about there. And these are really fun workbooks that I will send the whole thing to you. And you can only look at the one page, or you can look at all the supporting documents that pull into that page.
All right. By next Tuesday, do you think you'll have it closed out to see what we have as far as any rollover, if at all?
Yes.
Kind of, so we can maybe, if we need to adjust the appropriation, we can make some adjustments next Tuesday.
I would suggest making the appropriation adjustments in 2 weeks after this coming week, just because I'm going to be out of town
Okay,
Sunday through
yep.
Thursday. It's my anniversary. I can call you on Friday after I meet with April and the Auditor of State, and kind of give you an update. And hopefully, we're closed out by then, and we'll know how far down this list we can go. And if anybody sees something on this list that you would bump up, I need to know. And
Okay. All right, I guess we'll know more after Friday then too, and to see what we can pay, and then we'll work on another appropriation for them in a couple weeks to try and get a little closer to where we need to be. And if anything comes up in between then, we can give everybody a shout or let everybody know on Tuesday. But, does anybody else have anything, questions or anything? No. You guys have anything?
Kind of like to know where we're left at. I mean, there was some discussions and that kind of got halted, but we never hear about, we hear about the vendors and we hear about, and I've got membership I need to report back to, and they just want some answers,
Can we get a meeting called for tomorrow night or Thursday night? I saw an email.
Oh, that's not anything to do with this.
Yeah, it is. That's what he's asking about, negotiations.
No.
no, he's talking about the money that's owed them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's the,
We had a couple of finance meetings ago with brokered a plan somewhat, and then there were some things
Structure.
happen, right?
Yes.
So I just, but it's never, we always hear about the vendors and what needs to be paid out, but there's never anything talk about the obligations owed to the employees in a specific plan format. I'm just asking for some feedback that I can take back to the membership and say, here's the rate. It doesn't, we can do that outside.
Yeah, that's fine. We can talk afterwards. Yeah.
all right. All right, that being said, then I guess we'll adjourn this meeting for now, and if we may be calling another one for next Tuesday before council if need be, so. All right, thank you, this meeting is adjourned.